Stay with us. We're turning over to the United States for another development coming up next, where the US House is set to vote today on a war powers resolution aimed at halting President Donald Trump's military action against Iran. The vote follows a similar measure in the Senate, which was defeated along party lines. The vote is expected to be close, with Republicans in control of both bodies. The resolution would restrict the president's ability to continue the war unless Congress approves it. A separate resolution affirming Iran's role as the largest state sponsor of terrorism will also be voted on. Mark, coming to you first with this. A lot of critics have sounded alarm bells after Donald Trump went and started this conflict along with Israel, as he didn't get congressional approval. Do you think this resolution here puts those critics to rest?
Potentially. We also got to go through history. I don't think with some of the actions that President Obama took, nor did in regard to Libya as one example, nor did President Clinton in regard to Kosovo as another example under his presidency. I don't think they just went ahead with that. And as you would say, of course, it's along political lines, but people have short memories. But to be fair as well, I can understand the caution, because some of the politicians that are then now in the House or in the Senate, they've also had military experience. They've had military experience in regard to the Iraq War as one example. But I would propose to say, before people criticize me, that I think we're looking at something something different. And one of the reasons why we're looking at different is because we have to bear in mind that Iran is such a state sponsor of terrorism around the world, and we have to bear that in mind. And hence why, as dear Yossi has just said, in regard to where Iranian ships end up, that is all part of taking what they can do, what they would like to exercise, and what they're capable of out. And we have to bear all these things in mind. But of course, they are going to come against and say, President Trump, this is an action that we disagree with, and it's also along political lines. And just finally, I'll just say this: where were those democratic voices in regard to 35,000 and far more of beautiful Persians that were killed on the streets in Iran that happened a few weeks ago? Where were their voices in regard to that? Because I think there was crickets, as we say in America, or deafening silence outside. Thomas.
Yes, and Yossi, a lot of analysts are looking at this situation and saying that this war will be extremely damaging for Donald Trump when it comes to the midterms. Are you concerned about the president's power being restricted, possibly come November?
Well, I don't know if it's really going to be having a negative impact on Donald Trump support in the midterms, because much depends on the results of the war. Nobody knows at this point how this war is going to end up. And we are in the very early stages of this war, so this is going to last probably several more weeks at least. So it's too early to say. If he's going to be able to bring about a change in the regime, or at least a change in the capabilities of this regime, in a way that is clear that to everybody that he has actually managed to get what he wanted to achieve, then I think it's going to play in his favor. But if not, then the opposite is going to happen. I don't think there is much disagreement about the fact that Iran is a bad country, a state sponsoring terrorism and so on, so it deserves to be, and everybody wants to see this regime change. The question is whether this act was justified, and of course it was justified, because this is a regime that not only poses a threat to the stability and the security of everybody outside of Iran, but also a threat to the people of Iran themselves. So something needs to be done. And what is more imminent than the fact that they've already killed 35,000 of their own people? So it's clearly something that has to be done about it. And the United States is the only country in the world that is ready to take upon itself such missions. Thankfully, they have the Israeli capabilities supporting them in this operation.
Okay, Yossi, Mark, do stay with us once again. We have updates coming from Europe, where the United Kingdom has said that it was temporarily withdrawing some staff and their dependents from Bahrain as Iran presses on with its retaliation campaign in the Gulf. The UK has added that due to ongoing security issues, the UK has taken the precautionary step of temporarily withdrawing some embassy staff and their families. The UK has also said that its embassy continues to operate as the situation is serious and that the UK does not expect it to end in the coming days. Mark, do you think Keir Starmer has made the correct decision here? He, of course, has made numerous speeches now in terms of the situation. Donald Trump and him seemingly falling out. Donald Trump, as he does, making that headline-worthy statement, calling him not quite Winston Churchill in an off comment, of course, topping newspapers around the UK. What are your thoughts in the way that he has acted and the UK as a whole has acted for the span of this conflict?
As it's a family show, I'll try and keep it clean. Frankly, his behaviour and their policies, as far as I'm concerned, have been despicable. We need to be supporting our allies, and he hides behind this whole definition of international law, which is another huge subject in itself. It would be understandable that you then speak to embassy staff. You do have a responsibility to them. And again, I'm not privy to certain decisions and discussions that are going on behind closed doors. But I will say this, that when a prime minister stands up before the country or in another group of people from a particular demographic and says, well, we didn't bomb Iran, I'm sorry, I end up doing the impersonation. I find it disgusting. It doesn't show us as a credible power in the world. In fact, we're being mocked, and it's understandable. And President Trump is right to say that Keir Starmer is no Winston Churchill. There's no way I'm going to argue with him on that. And I will just clarify and say this, Thomas, just because the Prime Minister of the UK or other politicians are then coming out with the comments that they are, doesn't mean that they represent a lot of people in the UK and their views, because they don't. And there are many people that stand with the actions that the Americans have taken and also the Israelis have taken. And I will say this, and particularly in regard to Israel and what has gone on from the 7th of October 2023, is that they are fighting on behalf of Western civilization. Now, other people may disagree with me on that. That's their opinion. But we don't have time to go through that. But this is what is up at stake, and also within all the mix that we have to bear in mind constantly. And when you need strength and people to actually stand up and say, we're going to make the tough decisions and we're going to stand with our friends and allies. And unfortunately, I would say that the Prime Minister of the UK and the administration have certainly let us down, and they've certainly let their allies down. Thomas.
Yes, Mark, thank you very much for taking the time in joining us here on the broadcast. It's always a great pleasure to talk to you. Yossi, stay with us. We're turning over to some further developments. Loud explosions have shaken Abu Dhabi as the